Good evening, everyone. Welcome you all to yet another session of Mehta and Mehta on series of CSR that we have started. Today, we would be speaking on monitoring, evaluation, and impact assessment. And Dolly, who is our CSR partner, will take care of the presentation. Our panelist for today is Mr. Sachin Mardikar. He is a chartered accountant and cost accountant by training. He has over 26 years of experience across sectors. He has started his professional career in pharmaceutical industry. Then he has moved to tax, compliance, and consulting at Deloitte during the early part of his career. Post sabbatical at IIM Bangalore, he has moved to the social development sector and traveled roles. His core area of expertise is in CSR planning and structuring, monitoring and impact assessment and compliances. He is currently the CFO at Reliance Foundation and enjoys traveling and photography during his spare time. Welcome, sir. And we also have Ms. Mehta and Sudhakar Saraswatula, sir, as our panelists for today. Over to you, sir.
Just, I want to add 2-3 lines what Ashwini has told about Sachin. In fact, Sachin is independent. I mean, he is one of the key officials of Reliance Foundation. And as far as Reliance Foundation is concerned, the approximate expenditure is on an average of 1,200 to 1,500 crores per year in between. So the entire thing, it is up to Sachin. Actually, he has to control that because entire Reliance group is spending through Reliance Foundation only. That is the implementing agency. And every board meeting of RIL as well as its subsidiaries, it is Sachin who makes the presentation. And every time he gets accolades for his presentation, because the way he explains to the board, the way he briefed the board is, in fact, I was telling that whenever we are talking about monitoring and impact assessment is concerned, I have to bring Sachin. He's such a busy official, very difficult to get him. Ultimately, today we could bring him for this particular program. And I'm sure that every one of us will get benefited with Sachin's deliberations with us. With these few words, I will request Dolly to start her presentation, and we will discuss over this thing. In fact, I requested Sachin that he will be the only batsman today. None of us will speak much. He is the only person who is going to speak and share his practical knowledge as far as the monitoring is concerned, as far as the evaluation is concerned, impact assessment is concerned. Whatever your queries, questions are there, you may address to him in the chat box, and Ashwini will moderate that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Look forward to an interesting session ahead, sir.
So on behalf of Mehta Mehta, we welcome you, Sachin sir, in this webinar and all the participants. So actually in chat box, I just read many people are requesting to speak in Hindi because we have participants from NGO domain as well. So हमारा आज का टॉपिक है मॉनिटरिंग इवैल्यूएशन एंड इम्पैक्ट असेसमेंट. जैसे आप सबको जानकारी होगी कि कंपनीज एक्ट 2013 में CSR एप्लीकेबल मतलब लागू किया गया. सो CSR के जो रूल्स है, कंपनीज एक्ट CSR पॉलिसी रूल 2014, उसके बारे में हम आज डिस्कशन करेंगे. और उसके बाद काफी सारी कंपनीज को इम्पैक्ट असेसमेंट एप्लीकेबल है, तो उसके बारे में भी हम आज डिस्कशन करेंगे. So first I will read with a concept. So what is the monitoring, evaluation and impacts assessment, which are actually a powerful tools to access the health, social and economic impact. They allow us to learn what works and why. So यहाँ पे मॉनिटरिंग, इवैल्यूएशन एंड इम्पैक्ट असेसमेंट से हमें ये पता चलता है कि कंपनीज जो इन्वेस्ट कर रही है हेल्थ, सोशल एंड इकोनॉमिक सेक्टर में, उसका एक्चुअल में कितना इम्पैक्ट हो रहा है, मतलब कि उसका रिजल्ट क्या आ रहा है और कौन सा प्रोजेक्ट वर्क कर रहा है और क्यों कर रहा है. फिर हम बात करेंगे मॉनिटरिंग क्या होता है. तो मॉनिटरिंग मीन्स कलेक्टिंग इंफॉर्मेशन रेगुलरली इन ऑर्डर टू ऑब्जर्व द project's progress and maintain quality standards. monitoring is done to review the project's progress, to be able to make informed decision, to provide a basis for further analysis. So monitoring से क्या होता है कि जब भी कोई प्रोजेक्ट में कोई कंपनी इन्वेस्ट करती है, बाद में वो कंपनी वो प्रोजेक्ट को मॉनिटर करके ये पता कर सकती है कि वो प्रोजेक्ट में कितना प्रोग्रेस हुआ, और उसके हिसाब से वो एक इन्फॉर्म डिसीजन ले सकते हैं फॉर द आगे, मतलब आगे वो प्रोजेक्ट में क्या किया जाए इसके लिए. Monitoring is useful for documenting inputs, outputs, and easily captured results. This can be particularly relevant for a project in which a full evaluation is not possible. अभी हम बात करेंगे evaluation के बारे में. So what is evaluation? Evaluation examines and evaluates the process, results, and social impact. Evaluation is done to describe and assess progress and result, to draw conclusions and derive recommendations. तो evaluation एक procedure है जहाँ पे हमको ये पता चलता है कि प्रोग्रेस कितना हुआ है और रिजल्ट क्या आया है, और उससे हम एक कंक्लूजन बना सकते हैं, एंड ऑल्सो हम लोग एक रिकमेंडेशन, मतलब आगे जो प्रोजेक्ट करेंगे उसमें और क्या बेहतर किया जाए वो हमें इवैल्यूएशन प्रोसेस से पता चल सकता है. If the monitoring data reveals that a project is not as going as a planned, an evaluation can establish why this is so. अगर हमने कोई प्रोजेक्ट में इन्वेस्ट किया और फिर हमें पता चलता है कि जो प्रोजेक्ट हमने जो प्लान किया था उसके हिसाब से वो नहीं जा रहा है, तो वो इवैल्यूएशन से हम ये रीजन क्या है, मतलब उसका कारण क्या है, वो पता कर सकते हैं. Evaluations can be carried out at various points in time. Difficult to collect data are generally collected through evaluations. Monitoring and implementation. So as per Companies Act, a company can do the CSR spending via 3 routes. First, they can do by their own, directly they can invest in CSR. फॉर एग्जाम्पल कोई कंपनी है, उनको अगर वो हॉस्पिटल कंस्ट्रक्शन के लिए फंडिंग देना है तो वो डायरेक्टली भी दे सकते हैं, डायरेक्टली हॉस्पिटल यानी कि जो ट्रस्ट है उसको वो दे सकते हैं. सेकेंड, कंपनी अंडरटेक CSR एक्टिविटीज थ्रू इट्स ओन एस्टेब्लिश्ड ट्रस्ट और फाउंडेशन. कंपनी सेकेंड वे में अपना उन लोग का खुद का जो फाउंडेशन रहेगा. फॉर एग्जाम्पल रिलायंस इंडस्ट्रीज, तो उनका फाउंडेशन है रिलायंस फाउंडेशन. सो वो रिलायंस फाउंडेशन के थ्रू भी वो लोग इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं CSR प्रोजेक्ट में. ओके, एंड कंपनी में ऑब्टेन क्वार्टरली और हाफ ईयरली रिपोर्ट फ्रॉम ट्रस्ट और फाउंडेशन एज टू द यूटिलाइजेशन ऑफ फंड. और वो कंपनी अपने जो फाउंडेशन है, जो उनकी इम्प्लीमेंटिंग एजेंसी है, उनसे वो लोग हाफ ईयरली रिपोर्ट, क्वार्टरली रिपोर्ट भी ले सकते हैं. कंपनी अंडरटेक्स CSR एक्टिविटीज थ्रू इम्प्लीमेंटिंग एजेंसी. सो कोई आउटसाइडर एजेंसी अपॉइंट करके भी कंपनी जो इम्प्लीमेंटिंग एजेंसी होगी कंपनी की, सो कंपनी इम्प्लीमेंटिंग एजेंसी के थ्रू भी CSR स्पेंड कर सकती है.
So Dolly, यहाँ पे 2 चीजें बहुत important है as practitioners. First is, the law allows the company to itself undertake a CSR activity. ठीक है. कंपनी बेस्ड ऑन दी, जैसे अभी आपने पहले बताया, as per the CSR policy etc, based on the directions and approval of the board, a company and its own team may decide कि हमें एक particular activity करना है. पर जैसे हम जानते हैं कि प्राइवेट सेक्टर या पब्लिक सेक्टर कोई भी अंडरटेकिंग है, उसका कोर कॉम्पिटेंस होता है प्रोडक्ट्स, कस्टमर्स, प्रोसेसेस. ठीक है, ये सारी चीजें. सोशल डेवलपमेंट की जब आप बात आती है तो वो एक इट्स अ कंप्लीटली डिफरेंट फील्ड ऑल टुगेदर. कंपनी मे नॉट हैव दोज स्किल्स व्हिच आर रिक्वायर्ड. फॉर एग्जांपल, वी आर, लेट्स से एक कंपनी है जो सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट करती है, सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट कंपनी, बट इट मे वांट टू डू समथिंग इन ड्रिंकिंग वाटर, व्हिच इज अ वेरी डिफरेंट प्रोजेक्ट. प्लांटेशंस या हॉस्पिटल करना है तो, सो देयरफॉर द लॉ अलाउज यू टू एक्चुअली establish either your own trust or foundation, wherein you can actually hire specialized people from the sector and implement it, number one, or you can actually engage with third party implementing agencies. So here important for setting the right context, क्योंकि आगे चल के हम monitoring impact और पूरे साइकिल के बारे में बात करने वाले हैं, तो इनिशियल स्ट्रक्चर इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू अंडरस्टैंड. Sure.
Okay. So अभी हम बात करेंगे CSR monitoring. So first of all, company has to get the certification from the CFO of their CSR spend and the utilization of their spend on the CSR activity. Also, in case a company which is engages as an implementing agency, so an audited utilization certificate should be obtained from that implementing agency. So यहाँ पे companies के जो CFO होते हैं, CFO को as per the Companies Act 2013 उन लोग को certify, मतलब उन लोग को एक document देना होगा कि जो CSR fund है वो उनकी जो CSR policy है company की, उसके हिसाब से वो बराबर से यूटिलाइजेशन हुआ है और प्रोजेक्ट के लिए यूज किया गया है जो बोर्ड ने अप्रूव किया. सेकेंड थिंग, कंपनी जो इम्प्लीमेंटिंग एजेंसी के थ्रू CSR पे इन्वेस्ट कर रही है, उनको भी इम्प्लीमेंटिंग एजेंसी से एक यूटिलाइजेशन सर्टिफिकेट दे शुड ऑब्टेन लेना चाहिए. इट्स अ गुड प्रैक्टिस.
An interesting part, because when we talk about CSR monitoring, so often there's a misconception that it all starts and ends with just financial utilization. UC audited UC submit कर दिया तो हो गया क्या? तो that's an erroneous belief. क्योंकि the idea of monitoring is not just policing. The idea of monitoring is basically कि हम एक मिरर की तरह उस पूरी एक्सरसाइज को देखें, जहां हम सिर्फ हमने कितना पैसा खर्च हुआ है इस पर्टिकुलर प्रोजेक्ट में, whatever we have spent, we don't just account or look for that, but we also try and focus as a company on what have we achieved, what is the kind of impact and the change it has created. So therefore, when we talk of CSR monitoring, the first part in monitoring, evaluation, learning, etc., impact assessment is the first is, of course, the financial monitoring. So there is a compliance part, which is a CFO certificate, which everyone has to give. But I think when we do the financial monitoring, we have to also go beyond numbers.
Yeah.
So it is not just enough that the organization has received 10 lakh rupees and spent. No, but what those 10 lakh rupees have done, what are the activities which we have undertaken, which the implementing agency has undertaken these activities, what have been the feedback from the community. Those are also the important things, because 10 lakh रुपए में ये अगर हम एक example लें, if you spend 10 lakh rupees and we have benefited, let's say 100 households, some other organization or through some other innovation, we may be able to use the same money to impact not just 100 but 200 or 500 people. So that is where the efficiency part of money, that is where the how effective the project, those are the considerations which come in. So as a part of financial monitoring, we should not restrict ourselves to just the financial number, but go beyond that. Having said that, जब हम financial monitoring के भाई ये पैसा खर्चा किया, 200 आदमी benefit हुए हैं, but ये 200 आदमी जो benefit हुए, किस तरह का benefit हुआ है, right? जो हमारा पूरा CSR planning cycle जैसे annual action plan से शुरुआत होता है, so I think need assessment.
Yes.
तो यहाँ ये बात आती है कि when we trying to look at the physical outcomes and all, the outcomes have to be viewed in the context of the need assessment, which is the stage number 1. Okay, so between stage number 1 and stage number 10, let us say there are 9 other processes. So if the physical outcomes measurement is step number 10, the first step is, of course, the need assessment at the start of the project. So the starting point in monitoring of the physical outcomes always has to be the need assessment. कि क्या ज़रूरतें हैं communities की and other things. Align with that is the review of strategic plans कि जो भी हमारी रणनीति बनी है, जो भी हमारी क्या कहते हैं planning हुई है, how we are actually going to benefit. So those reviews, and more last but not the least, whether whatever we have achieved, whether that can be subject to a third party audit and validation. See, everybody likes their child. हर एक को लगता है कि मैंने सबसे दुनिया में सबसे बढ़िया काम किया है, but actually वाकई में किया है कि नहीं? So that is where the third party audits, that is where the impact studies actually help a lot in bringing in the transparency. Good. Yeah, let's proceed.
Dolly, I want to add a few points what Sachin has added to that further.
Yeah.
Especially the monitoring and implementation is the responsibility of the CSR committee as well as of the board. So when we are talking about legal responsibility, obviously that is to be taken seriously. And CFO also has been obligated that he has to give a certificate to the board of directors that about the CSR spend is concerned. Several times the question comes that whether the CFO certificate is to be given as per the rules to the board, whether if the CSR committee can ask for that. Answer is always yes, why not? Because it is the responsibility of the CSR committee primarily and then thereafter the board. Second question is, though the time period is not mentioned as such, CFO certificate is to be given yearly basis, quarterly basis, half-yearly basis, that is up to the company and the CSR committee's discussion. If I am a CSR committee member, I may even ask the CFO by that you please give me a bi-monthly certificate. I want to understand that the money what you are disbursing is properly spent or not spent.
Yeah.
Number two, several times the question comes, we have given the money to the implementing agency and the implementing agency has not implemented the project and now they are not returning the money. So as far as the company is concerned, the company has spent the money. It is not an argument at all. And please kindly note that by merely giving the money to the implementing agency, a trust or a Section 8 company or a society, whatever it may be, your obligation is not discharged. Even if you are given the money, if the project is not complete, if the program is not complete by the end of the year, you know that Section 5 and Section 6 will get triggered. That necessary compliances you have to make. If that you have disbursed the entire money, you are not bothered to check them to monitoring the progress of the project. And at the end of the year, you came to know that they have not done anything. It is you who have to discharge your obligations under Section 5 and 6. And the dispute between you and your implementing agency is a civil dispute. But you will not be out of that. And Section 7 will get triggered. Suppose if there is a non-compliance in Section 5 and 6, subsection 5 and 6, subsection 7 will get triggered. That's why, as I have mentioned earlier also, it is the responsibility of the CFO and the CSR committee not to disburse the entire funds at one go to the implementing agency. It is always advisable you give that much money according to the progress of the project. And similarly, before you are making any further disbursement, please ensure that previous disbursements money is properly utilized or not utilized, how much money is still pending to be utilized and all those things. Proper MIS is to be there, proper reports are to be there, and CFO and the CSR committee should merely not depend upon the paper. They have to go and visit the project periodically. What is the periodicity? It is up to them to decide it, whether they want to go on monthly basis or a quarterly basis, half-yearly basis. It is up to them. And once in a while, it is advisable, even the board of directors also have to go and see the projects, how they are coming up. As Sachin has rightly mentioned, merely spending the money, discharging the legal obligation is not the whole part. It is only one part of it. The second part of it is the objective for which you are spending the money. Is that objective is being achieved? That is the human element is concerned. That is the second part. For that, the experts who are there in this particular line, their help is to be required and they have to ensure that project is being implemented properly.
We can say that as company money, we take care in spending in business. It's also company money. We should ensure that the purpose for which we have carried out also it takes the fruit for which we desire.
Absolutely.
In fact, sir, I would like to add just one, slightly expand that one point here that suppose if a company disburses money to an implementing agency and the implementing agency, does not spend it, Okay, then immediately the unspent, those clauses related to unspent CSR will get triggered, irrespective of the fact whether whether the पैसा जो है implementing agency के पास पड़ा हुआ है, but अगर company is not able to prove the utilization, then there is a double penalty जिसको हम कहते हैं कि एक तरफ से तो पैसा आपने implementing agency को दे दिया है और दूसरी तरफ से आप डिफॉल्ट में भी रहेंगे क्योंकि आपने उस पैसे का जो भी एज पर दी बोर्ड अप्रूव टाइमलाइंस एटसेट्रा वो खर्चा नहीं हुआ है. सो दैट्स इम्पोर्टेंट थिंग. और यहाँ पे ध्यान रहे कि अभी शायद समय नहीं है, बट देयर हैव बीन चेंजेस इन इनकम टैक्स लॉज आल्सो. सो पहले जो होता था कि हम प्रोवाइड करके रख सकते थे बुक्स में, एंड आप लाइबिलिटी क्रिएट कर दी और आप 6 महीने बाद पेमेंट कर रहे हैं, तो वो सिस्टम अब बंद हो गया है. तो वेदर इन इनकम टैक्स या आप कंपनीज एक्ट में भी अगर आप बात करते हैं, CSR की बात करते हैं, सो इट हैज टू बी ऑन कैश बेसिस अलोन. That is the most important thing we need to remember.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Let's proceed.
Yeah. So now we will understand about the what is impact assessment. So basically, with the introduction of there are a lot of amendments in year 2021, 2022. So basically, the amendments is talking about that CSR is slowly coming of age with a shift in approach from philanthropy to the creating a sustainable impact. And that's how this impact assessment got introduced in the amendment 2021, 22nd January 2021, which already influenced the CSR landscape in India. The new requirement of CSR. The new requirement of CSR impact assessment has brought credibility and accountability to both the development sector and the stakeholders. That's why we have participants from both the domains. So now let's talk about impact assessment. So first of all, there is no definition given under the Act for the impact assessment. So in general terms, impact assessment is a planning and decision-making tool which is used to assess the potential positive and negative effects of the proposed project. Impact assessment, also known as an impact evaluation, helps companies and organizations evaluate the social and environmental impacts of their actions. And assessment program is a first step into an ongoing monitoring process. So basically impact assessment जो कंपनी करती है वो क्यों करती है, ये जानने के लिए कि वो जो भी प्रोजेक्ट पे स्पेंड कर रहे हैं, CSR एक्टिविटी वो कर रहे हैं सोशल इकोनॉमिक या तो एनवायरमेंट बेनिफिट के लिए, उस पे जो स्पेंड वो लोग कर रहे हैं, जो पैसा वो लोग एज अ CSR एक्टिविटी दे रहे हैं, उसका पॉजिटिव या नेगेटिव इफेक्ट आ रहा है सोसाइटी पे, एनवायरमेंट पे. For that, वो लोग impact assessment करते हैं. It would be good practice to identify the need for the project before approving its implementation. This identification of the need for the project will ensure that it acts as a basic parameter while carrying out impact assessment.
यहाँ पे डॉली जी दो चीजें, आई थिंक इफ यू कैन गो बैक एंड एक मिनट के लिए हम पॉज करते हैं कि ये जो हम आउटकम मेजरमेंट्स की, इम्पैक्ट असेसमेंट की बात है, तो ये सिर्फ कॉर्पोरेट सेक्टर में हो रहा है कि नहीं है, राइट? इंटरेस्टिंगली अगर आप गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया का बजट भी खोल के देखेंगे जो इस ईयर का, तो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया मूव टू आउटकम बजटिंग सम 10 years बैक. तो हर एक डिपार्टमेंट का एक पूरा बाकायदा बजट, आउटकम बजट बनता है कि रेलवेज या हेल्थ केयर या एजुकेशन डिपार्टमेंट में क्या करने वाले हैं अगले साल में, क्या आउटकम्स वो इस्टेब्लिश करेंगे, वो आउटकम्स कैसे दिखेंगे, उसका क्या स्कोरिंग होगा, इंडिकेटर्स क्या होगा और उसका बजट कितना है. सो ऐसा मतलब कई बार हमें लगता है कि सिर्फ प्राइवेट की बात हो रही है, तो दैट्स नॉट ट्रू. The government is way ahead of us as far as these processes are concerned. That's number one. Number two is important. There is a lot of renewed interest. At the end of the day, I was reading somewhere कि top BSE listed 200 companies का about 12 से 15,000 करोड़ रुपए तक का खर्चा है. So on one hand, government is spending lakhs of crores of rupees on development funds, but why there is so much focus on the private sector, yeah, CSR? So I think we need to go beyond beyond the simple numbers and try and understand. There are huge expectations. Okay, the expectations from beneficiaries, expectations from shareholders, कि ये जो आपके पास 10-15 हजार करोड़ रुपए का जो टोटल पूल है, रिसोर्स है for creating some programs. So there are huge expectations that you will really come up with projects, and you as in the company, the respective company will definitely come up with projects and proposals which will create a long-term sustainable change and impact. Okay? So the entire debate, why people, so there's so much attention on that 12, 15, 20,000 crore versus 2 lakh crore of Government of India welfare scheme. Government will do what it is supposed to do, so that's not a substitute, but there are a lot of expectations, and therefore, how do you, as a corporate, okay, there's a huge responsibility on all of us to ensure that every rupee which we invest in any development, social development project, essentially creates the impact. Okay, so not just the monitoring part, which we have discussed in the thoda der pehle, but अब जो प्रोजेक्ट हो रहा है उसका क्या प्रभाव हो रहा है, क्या इम्पैक्ट हो रहा है, क्या जमीनी स्तर पे आपने अगर कुआं खोदा है तो उस when you have dug a well, what happened to that? Is it simply water available? Yes, no, how people are using that water, etc. So there is a lot of interest on and renewed for expectations as far as impact assessment is concerned.
Yes, sir.
See, just to add further what Sachin has mentioned, in the very first webinar of itself, we have mentioned that there is a difference between charity, philanthropic activities, and corporate social responsibility activities. And CSR is not a charity, CSR is not a philanthropic activity. What is the difference between the two? Difference between the two is only one thing, that the philanthropy and charity are not organized properly. They are unorganized. They are depends upon the whims and fancies of the person who is deciding. Today, if he wants, he can spend the money. Tomorrow, he wants, he can close the shop, which is not the case in case of CSR. What government basically wants is that even the corporates have to join for the development of the nation. Because especially the areas which are not developed, because it is across the length and breadth of the country that the government expects the corporate social responsibility activities have to be spread. That is the reason, if you see in the rules, what they say is wherever your factories are located, first of all, the first preference is to be given for the improvement of those areas. Then beyond that, you will expand your activities. So whenever we talk about, normally in law, we always say that it is not only the word, but it is the spirit of the law which is to be understood and implemented. In case of corporate social responsibility, it is more applicable that not only it is the implementation of the rules, it is that human element has to go. That's why several corporates encourage their employees also to give a lending hand to the CSR activities. Sachin, if I am not wrong, at one point of time, even in Reliance also on Saturdays and Sundays, we have extended the invitation to all the employees. Wherever they can join their hand in the CSR activities of the group, they can come and join it. Am I correct?
Exactly, sir.
Yeah. Because several corporates, they want that because see that this is a kind of a passion. That passion somebody has to trigger. Sometimes what happens is we want to do something, but we don't know how to do that. So CSR is one of the ways you can get organized the things. So several corporates, they include the employees of the company also in the CSR activities. Of course, they have a separate proper departments and other things are there in a structured way. But at the same point of time, apart from that also, they want to inculcate that kind of a culture among the employees of the organization. This is how they do it also. Yeah. Sachin, you may also throw some light on the need assessment, though it is not mandatory as such, but impact assessment is mandatory. If you can link these two, that how the need assessment is going to help in the impact assessment.
Okay, I think there is a next.
Okay.
I think after 2 slides that thing will come.
Thereafter, okay, got it.
Yeah, I'll connect the two. But thank you, sir.
Sure.
So now we will talk about what are the benefits of impact assessment. So first of all, impact assessment will help to understand the sustainability aspect of the project being implemented. Second, it will help the funder in understanding the efficiency and effectiveness of the projects which is undertaken. Also, it will help to understand the changes in the lives of the beneficiaries of the project. For example, if some company is spending on the education for the girl's child education or a poor kid, then it will also help to understand what positive impact it has created on the life of the beneficiaries after a certain period of time. Also, it will help in planning of future project and discontinue the project which are not doing well. So basically here we are talking about the monitoring and evaluation. Involvement of all stakeholders in process of assessment and monitoring. Just now, Sudhakar sir has mentioned about that in Reliance Foundation, they used to involve the employees also, on the weekends for the CSR activities. So here also this point is talking about the same point. It talks about the involvement of all the stakeholders, which is including employees as well in the CSR activities.
Correct. In fact, as corporates, our biggest resource is our human resource or manpower, as we say. Okay, I mean, we have engineers, we have doctors, chartered accountants, lawyers, legal professionals, almost people from all walks of life, all domains of life, very highly qualified. Now, this is the biggest resource which any corporate actually brings on table, and I think that's in addition to the mandatory 2% whatever the amount is. And I think when we look at a corporate level involvement in a CSR project, this is the complete canvas we need to look into it.
Yes. So moving ahead. We will understand now the applicability of impact assessment. So as per the rule 8 sub-rule 3 brings the requirement about the impact assessment. First of all, the applicability, if we talk about every company having average CSR obligation of 10 crore rupees or more in the 3 immediately preceding financial years shall undertake impact assessment through an independent agency of their CSR project having outlays of 1 crore rupees or more, and which have been completed not less than 1 year before undertaking the impact study. So in case of impact assessment, it shall be carried out by project-wise only in cases where both the above conditions are fulfilled. So first condition is about the average CSR obligation of 10 crore rupees or more in the 3 immediately preceding financial years. And second condition is about the CSR projects having outlays of 1 crore rupees or more. In other cases, it can be taken up by company on voluntary basis. This rule 8.3 applies to the project completed on or after 22nd January 2021.
Whenever we actually engage in a project, okay, the results will not come overnight.
Yeah.
The results will take its due time. So therefore, the law has actually been very practical on this. It allows a kind of a one year maturity period, okay, wherein it is reasonable to expect that whatever work which you did. Okay, so suppose in the financial year 22-23 में मार्च में हमने जो भी प्रोजेक्ट किया, उसके आउटकम्स, उसके इम्पैक्ट आने में कम से कम 1 और साल लग जाएगा. So 23-24 year financial year is the one where you start seeing some result.
Yes.
It is only in the year 24-25 that it is reasonable to actually start measuring the impact. And I think for the sake of everyone, एक छोटा सा illustration से मैं समझाना चाहूँगा कि चलिए हमने एक छोटा सा एक आंगनवाड़ी प्रोजेक्ट किया है जहाँ बच्चों को एक बड़ी अच्छी एनवायरनमेंट की है और हमारी आशा थी कि स्कूल एनरोलमेंट बढ़ेगा, लोग बाग अपने बच्चों को भेजेंगे आंगनवाड़ी में या प्राथमिक स्कूल में जो भी है। बट ये तो आपने सारे एक्टिविटीज कर दिए, सारे इनपुट्स कर दिए, बट इसका रिजल्ट सही में कब पता चलेगा? जब अगले साल मतलब जून जुलाई में वापस पेरेंट्स अपने बच्चों को लेके वापस स्कूल में भर्ती कराने आएंगे। यहाँ अगर उस स्कूल में बच्ची लड़कियां शिक्षा नहीं लेती थी तो अब गर्ल चाइल्ड एजुकेशन भी वहां पे बढ़ रहा है। तो हम कह सकते हैं कि चलिए ओके, अब वी हैव रीच्ड अ लेवल वेयर वी आर सीइंग सम रिजल्ट्स। बट ऐसा भी नहीं होना चाहिए कि बच्चे स्कूल में जुलाई जून में ज्वाइन हो गए, ड्रेस वगैरह वो सब मिल गया और बाय द टाइम सितंबर अक्टूबर में वो ड्रॉप आउट हो गए, देन द प्रोजेक्ट इज नॉट रियली वेरी सक्सेसफुल। सो वी हैव टू वेट फॉर 1 ईयर। तो ऑटोमेटिकली जो जून जुलाई में बच्चे ज्वाइन हुए आराम से, it is expected that if your project was really good and impactful, naturally they would complete at least one academic year successfully. Then possibly in 24 June July may we can go back and see, okay, why either children have continued to study or have they dropped out, and if either ways there have been the positive learnings as well as what we call as there are no such thing as negative learning, but experiences, and how better it's like a feedback loop on how we can further improve the program. So that is why that 1 year kind of, I'll not call it cooling off period, but for want of words, yeah, let's use that. Yeah.
In fact, just to add, Sachin, what you said, as you rightly said, that it should be a minimum period of 1 year, not necessarily immediately after the 1 year you have to conduct the impact assessment. Sometimes the project may take 2-3 years before it gives its impact.
That's an excellent point, sir. Yes, yes.
For ongoing project.
You may please elaborate on that also, Sachin.
Correct. So what happens is, although the act prescribes 1 year, but I think if the board or the committee or the program design is such, where if this 1 year is not adequate, I mean the companies are at liberty to actually extend the period also. So ऐसा कोई पत्थर की लकीर नहीं है. These are the recommendations. But if I mean we know how the social sector is, कैसे design change होता है, complexities हैं. So 1 year is a generic time period that has been prescribed. But in some cases, you may initiate an impact assessment study after 18 months, even 24 months also. So that is the philosophy.
Just to give an example to that, say for example, if a company is taking up a project of de-addiction camps, whether it is a drug addiction, whether it is the drinking habits, smoking habits and all, if there is a project has been taken for de-addiction, by the time that project is going to give its result, it will take a minimum of 2-3 years, because that de-addiction thing will not happen across over 1 year only. So definitely the companies can decide that, okay, after a couple of years, after completion of the project, we will go and conduct the impact assessment. Okay, this is very important point. Sachin, you are rightly raised this issue. Yes, Dolly.
Yes. Yeah. So CSR committee shall appoint any implementing agency or a trust for carrying out the CSR activities, which includes a review and monitoring. Companies or their CSR initiatives cannot conduct impact assessment, that is like self-assessment, which is already we have spoken earlier about, so Sachin sir has given a nice example as well. So basically an independent agency must be engaged for the assessment. The board has a right to decide the eligibility criteria for the selection of independent agency for the impact assessment. So under Rule 8.3, sub-rule B talks about the impact assessment report shall be placed before the board, and also it shall be annexed to the annual report on the CSR. It is clarified that the web link to access the complete impact assessment report and providing executive summary of the impact assessment reports in the annual report on CSR shall be considered as sufficient compliance of the said rule. So the companies are supposed to share their website link to access the impact assessment report. And also they have to summarize their impact assessment report in their annual reports. Also, they have to mention the necessary details like amount spent on impact assessment in Annexure 2 for which format is given for the annual report on CSR activities, which is to be included in the board's report. So this was all about the compliance on the part of the corporates to whom the impact assessment is applicable. Also, a company which is undertaking the impact assessment, they can book the expenditure towards the CSR for that financial year, which shall not be more than 2% of the total CSR expenditure for that financial year, or 50 lakh rupees, whichever is higher. So the expenditure incurred on impact assessment is over and above the specified administrative overheads of 5%. So under the Companies Act and the rules for the CSR, there is one provision for the administrative overheads where company is allowed to book the expenses for the overheads up to 5%. Okay, so basically here the impact assessment expenditure, which is over and above that administrative overheads.
In fact, Sachin, recently somebody asked me that a question that this 5% administrative expenditure is there and impact assessment is there, that 2% or the 50 lakhs, whichever is higher. So people say that, suppose that we have to spend administrative expenditure or impact assessment expenditure beyond the threshold limits, then what will happen? Okay, so to my knowledge, the answer to that is only, suppose if you have to spend, you may spend it, but it will not be a part of your CSR expenditure. Over and above that, you do spend just like any other revenue expenditure of yours. That is the only answer to that. Is my understanding correct, Sachin?
No, absolutely. So these are basically, I think we have to apply what is called as a test of reasonability. So I think in fact, the last year's October amendments have actually made it more liberal now. So those restrictions have also gone. 5% has become, I think, 3%, and there is increased. Whichever is less has become whichever is more.
Yeah. You see, earlier this impact assessment only 5% or 50 lakh rupees, whichever is lower.
Correct.
In fact, several forums I have mentioned that a company like Reliance, if you say that the expenditure is about 12 to 1500 crores, and then you say impact assessment only 50 lakh rupees you have to spend, because that is a lower figure.
That is a lower figure.
But
exactly.
Subsequently, in October last year, the change has come. Now they say it is 2% of the CSR expenditure or 50 lakh rupees, whichever is higher. At least to some extent, this is good. Actually, I thought that it will be 5% of CSR expenditure or 50 lakhs, whichever is higher. But they are not given the 5%, they are given only 2%.
It's just a reallocation from the overall program overheads, basically.
Correct.
But But the good part is that this allows large companies and corporates which are handling far more complex projects to actually engage, reputed, third-party independent agencies. And as we know, it is not a short-term, assignment or a project. Most of these impact assessment studies are very, very intensive. They are, highly scientific, because at the end of the day, whatever is the outcome, whatever are the results are to be put up in public domain. They are to be, and they are subject to public scrutiny also. So it is not just a feel-good report. No, we're not looking for a third-party consultant giving a full feel-good report ki bahut acha kaam ho gaya. No, it's not about getting a shabashi on your shoulder. So the impact assessment is basically to really some very serious money companies are investing in trying to understand if the projects, if the initiatives which they have undertaken, supported during the previous financial years is actually delivering the impact. जो भी जिस उद्देश्य से हम चले थे ये कार्यक्रम करने के लिए, वो उद्देश्य सफल हुआ है कि नहीं? पैसा तो खर्चा हो गया, पर वाकई में अगर हमने कहा था कि अन्न सुरक्षा, फूड सिक्योरिटी के लिए हम काम करना चाहते हैं और हमने अगर 1 करोड़ रुपए उस पर खर्चा किया है, तो वाकई में किसानों के पेट में उनको 2 जून या 2 वक्त प्रॉपर खाना मिल रहा है कि नहीं, क्या उनके बच्चों के लिए न्यूट्रिशन सफिशिएंट है कि नहीं है. That is the ultimate test. The test is not simply कि आपने 1 करोड़ रुपए में 4 चेक डैम बना दिए, 5 जगह पे पाइपलाइन डाल दी, नहीं. पर उस जो आपने चेक डैम बनाया, जो आपने पानी की सुविधा की, उसमें से किस तरह की फसलें उगाई, उसमें फूड सिक्योरिटी क्या है, उसका न्यूट्रिशन कंपोनेंट क्या है. तो ये सारी चीजों को देखने के बाद में पता लगता है कि हाँ, ये जो हमने 1 रुपया आज हमने खर्चा किया है, ये जो इन्वेस्ट किया है डेवलपमेंट में, ये अगले इसका इम्पैक्ट या असर कम से कम अगले 10 साल तक रहेगा. तो वो 10x 20x तक उसका इम्पैक्ट दिखेगा अगर हम फाइनेंशियल टर्म्स की बात करें तो. एंड दैट इज वेयर लॉट ऑफ दिस इम्पैक्ट असेसमेंट पे कंपनीज आर वेरी वेरी सीरियस. एंड इट्स गुड कि थोड़ा सा लिबरल रिजीम हो गया है.
See, in fact, one more thing also I would like to add, what Sachin has rightly mentioned is, it is not the question of discharging your legal obligations. It is not the question of spending the money. It is say, for example, in Schedule 7, so many activities are given towards which you can discharge your CSR activity, CSR obligations. But if you see, mostly people focus upon health, education. That's it. Beyond that, they don't go. In fact, if anybody is interested in the participants, what exactly in CSR one can do it. It is not like that, because I had worked with Reliance earlier. I'm not saying that. Please read the CSR report, which is a part of the annual report of Reliance. You will come to know that how the CSR expenditure, which are incurred by the corporates, change the dynamics of the country altogether in the coming years. In fact, there is heritage, culture, art. There are several things, because all these things are dying. And similarly, rural sports. In fact, Reliance spend money on all these things apart from education and health. No doubt about it. These are the primary areas which India requires. Apart from that thing, also there are so many other activities which are there. So, Sachin, one more thing I would like to ask you is about the impact assessment, since we are talking about impact assessment. Who can conduct that? It is not given in the rules. What it says, only thing is the company cannot conduct impact assessments of its own activities. It should be done by an outside agency. Now, there are several participants who are practicing company secretaries and chartered accountants and the NGOs in this particular forum. I request you to kindly throw some light on exactly who can do the impact. Suppose if as a PCS firm, suppose, for example, Mehta and Mehta, we want to start one vertical on impact assessment. We want to do for the companies. How we have to equip ourselves, and what are the things which we have to equip with? If you can throw some light on that.
No, excellent. Because early part of my career, I still remember I was with Deloitte and वो सब बड़े degrees वगैरह लेके. My first job was I was thrown in a village actually. कि जब बच्चों को आपको जाके पढ़ाना है या some I don't remember, it's almost 20 years back. So I went to that village preparing all those PPT slides and everything, what I had learned, Microsoft PowerPoint and all that. I landed in that village. There was no electricity, no bench, no blackboard. It was actually a poultry farm, makeshift poultry farm. जहाँ पे 10-12 बच्चों को बिठा दिया और फिर आप you start. And it was like, I used to then work in Nariman Point, and वहाँ से बिल्कुल जमीन पे you came down. And by God's grace, I could somehow manage क्योंकि उतना तो हो गया. But an important learning then was that, okay, each one of us have certain core skills. Some of us are doctors, engineers, chartered accountants, company secretaries. This is our we follow a principle of T. This is our core skills. Beyond that, when we have to actually go, and especially when it comes to impact assessments, etc., we need to develop as an individual first. I'm going to first talk about individual and then firm. So as an individual, I think we have to grow beyond what our core competency is and move into a more what shall I say, understanding people, understanding communities in a better way. As the words of legendary Vijay Mahajanji still resonate in me, I went to Nirmal sir as an induction, and I was surprised when I saw NASA space engineers and IITs professionals working in a small town Nirmal near Adilabad, and we were trying to design microfinance solutions. So one thing I remember is, so long as you have empathy as an individual, you can actually start working in the sector. So that is the first thing. Now let's me focus on an institution. So let's say Mehta and Mehta or any other CSR advisory or a company we are wanting to set up in this space. So we would typically you would require a team. A team would have different composition. So you will need experts who are, let's say, from the financial services. You will need social sector experts, who could be MSWs or who have pursued other, postgraduate diplomas or degrees in development studies. You will need communication experts. You will need professionals who are very good in project management skills. You will need individuals who have great understanding of HR processes, institution development, and aspects like that. So collectively, as a firm, these are 4 or 5 skill sets you should have, any firm should have, which will enable you to actually bid for or approach any impact assessment assignment. Last but not the least, this is a scientific exercise. So we will also require professionals who are from research background, from analytics background. So these are the 4 or 5 key skill sets which we require. And as a company, it is not necessary that we should have all the people on board on a permanent basis. So most of these people, these professionals prefer to work independently, and one can form a consortium of or a panel of experts and take up an assignment. So typically, sir, if I just take 30 seconds more, there are a lot of similar assignments done by United Nations, World Bank, and all that. So there also they usually have a terms of reference drawn, and different sectoral experts come together as a virtual team and engage in a particular exercise and submit their reports and just move on.
Okay, one more thing I would like to ask you is that I have seen in the last year annual report of RIL that though it was not mandatory, RIL got the impact assessment done for some projects. Okay, so when you get the impact assessment done, number one, how to select the agency? Number two, what is the role of the company in that? Just like an auditee-auditor relationship, or how exactly it goes?
Okay, so first is the agency selection. So normally each company first prepares what is called as the request for RFP, what we call as a document which basically lists down details of the projects, and therefore what are the areas of potential areas of impact assessment. Basis which basis this request for proposals, we may call companies may usually give their bid document or proposals that this is what our proposal is, and with respect to your project we would like to undertake the impact assessment. Now when, let's say, we as Reliance or as anybody I've received 5 such proposals from 5 agencies. the first and foremost filtering criteria is how well the other agency has understood our project. Okay, number one, because if they have not understood our project, if they have not understood what work we have done based on, of course, secondary data, then I think we will not really, there is an understanding issue. We may not really start on the right foot. So therefore, two important things is whenever we screen such, proposals, we look at their understanding of our programs. Are they asking the right questions to us? Okay, that's number two. Number three, who are the people who are actually going to do the impact assessment? Is it merely a collection of names, or is it some serious engagement which is going to happen? And what I find is a lot of time, in fact, 80% of the impact assessment proposals are all about surveys. And survey is an important tool, but as part of impact assessment, we are not just looking at survey agencies. We don't want, I mean, we know our projects, we know we have done good, we know that we have actually created impact. So, just by asking or undertaking 500 interviews or 1,000 interviews and coming up with a quote that 80% people were happy, that really doesn't add value to the assignment. So if the proposals are more in the nature of surveys and interviews and all, that's not really the king. I mean, it's not really going to click. So that is where a lot of filtration happens. So what is the intellectual capability which an organization, third-party impact assessment organization, is bringing on the table? Okay, that's the key, because that is the starting point. Having done that, then the final terms of reference are and all the participants are usually developed mutually, okay, between the implementing agency or the company and the impact assessment agency. The terms of reference are mutually developed. There is usually a pilot stage where the hypothesis is tested to ensure that we are in the right direction or not. And basis the pilot study or a short kind of a testing of tools, methodologies, etc., the final approach is defined. Yeah. And it's important that the companies which are actually companies which are supporting these CSR projects are or should be an integral part of this process. Yeah. This cannot be outsourced.
Can I ask that if you can give example for suppose a company is spending CSR for starting the school. So what you will look for impact assessment agency to give you the information? If I put that way, like they will do survey in a very short, just for example.
Sure. So let's say starting a school. It's a very simple thing. But I think we need to look at why is the company really investing in starting up a school. Okay, what were the local socio-economic compulsions or conditions which were prevailing, which implored the company to start the project? And I think, ma'am, this is where Sudhakar sir had earlier asked me about need assessment. Okay, so each of the companies would have, as a starting point, whether it's a Reliance or any other company, we would actually undertake a need assessment process first, because that will establish the baseline that why we are actually doing setting up a school or not. What is it that we are trying to achieve? Are we just simply creating 4 walls, colorful, with all the modern amenities, or we realize that the school physical building exists, but there are no teachers, or we realize that the building is there, the teachers are also there, but teacher capability is an issue, right? So within this whole space, what is it that we are trying to achieve? So I'll extend this further. In many schools in rural areas, you will find are only boys. There are no girls who are actually part of the school. Now, why we may want to, as an organization, want to increase girl child enrollment into the school. So the first and foremost is, of course, the need assessment, come up with our intervention design. So एक स्कूल खड़ा करना है या स्कूल को सपोर्ट करना है is how a one-liner would appear in a statutory financial report, but उसके पीछे के इतनी सारी कहानियां होती है. So जब ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, अगर हम असेसमेंट की बात कर रहे हैं, तो यदि मेरा ऑब्जेक्टिव था इंक्रीज इन गर्ल चाइल्ड एनरोलमेंट, कैसे ज्यादा से ज्यादा लड़कियों को वहां पे स्कूल में एनरोलमेंट बढ़ाना, ये एक ऑब्जेक्टिव था. या दूसरा था कि मेरा सिविल कंस्ट्रक्शन वहां पे खड़ा करके एक अच्छी सी सेफ बिल्डिंग वहां पे तैयार करना, बाकी सारा है. तो उस हिसाब से जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, जो इम्पैक्ट असेसमेंट वाली एजेंसी है, उसके क्वेश्चंस भी अलग रहेंगे, क्योंकि इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर रिलेटेड क्वेश्चंस आर वेरी डिफरेंट फ्रॉम क्वेश्चंस रिलेटेड टू बिहेवियरल चेंज पार्ट ऑफ इट. तो अब वो स्टडी का अप्रोच, वो स्टडी के क्वेश्चंस, वो स्टडी के ओवरऑल एरिया ऑफ इंक्वायरी, सब कुछ भी अलग होगा.
So I can say that it can now, that suppose it's education, like you rightly mentioned.
So that is the next part.
Yeah.
So
it's like girl education, you mentioned that way. So it can be then extended, can be further to the health awareness, then hygiene, nutrition, then family education. It is ultimate impact. So this way it's a different area, and that way impact assessment of one school can be a very vast.
And it will be an integrated one, ma'am. Sorry for interrupting, but it will be an integrated impact, ma'am, not with a single objective impact. Myself, Parvez, I'm from Calcutta. So just recently, whatever the Sanjay sir told exactly here, that is a objective wise, because the company is looking the objective wise, the impact assessment, their achievement and the outputs, exactly in the term of the quantity and the quality both. If Sanjay sir is agree with that point.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll just illustrate it. हमारा ही Reliance Foundation had worked with Government of Maharashtra, और हमने यहाँ पे काफी सारे आंगनवाड़ीज में एक बहुत ही अच्छा प्रयोग किया था. So Reliance Nutrition Garden we had first piloted some 10 years back. It was a very unique scientific approach to right. It had become it was a very good scientific pilots we had done, which clearly established that how in a short space of around 72 square meter of land in the backyard also, families or households could actually, through appropriate crop planning, ensure that every household will get at least 100 to 250 ग्राम से आधा किलो तक ताजी फल सब्जियां उसको year round मिले. So a lot of effort, R&D, research, development went into it, and that was a very successful program for farmers and all. But we started thinking that iska और आगे हम क्या कर सकते हैं. So when the opportunity came with Government of Maharashtra, we said कि आंगनवाड़ी जहाँ पे है गांव में, वहाँ पे काफी सारी जमीन है. तो वेस्टर्न महाराष्ट्र में हमने पुणे के पास राजगुरु नगर और ये सब एरिया में we started this pilot. तो जहाँ पे एक प्लॉट हमने डिसाइड किया, जहाँ पे ये हमने रिलायंस न्यूट्रिशन गार्डन सेटअप किया. ओके, नाउ व्हाट हैपेंड इज दिस वाज एन एग्रीकल्चरल इंटरवेंशन इनिशियली. उसको न्यूट्रिशन, हेल्थ केयर एंड we kind of expanded all the way to address some of the malnutrition issues also. So direct benefits, of course, वहाँ पे हर रोज अब आधा किलो 2 किलो सब्जियां निकलने लगी. वो सब्जियां मिड डे मील का जो भोजन बनता था, खिचड़ी, उसके साथ में सप्लीमेंट होने लगा. बच्चों को भी वेराइटीज खाने को मिली. रोज एक ही खिचड़ी खाने के बजाय धीरे धीरे सब्जियां आने लगी. Very interesting what happened when I went to that village after 1.5 years. I found सांभर चावल बन रहा था एक दिन वहां पे, and I was surprised कि सांभर चावल कैसे बन रहा है. तो खिचड़ी का तो प्रोविजन होता है. Then the teachers only told us कि सर अब सब्जियां यहाँ पे मिलती हैं, अरहर की दाल यहाँ पे मिलती है, and many of the students और उनके families are from south of India. तो उन्होंने कहा कि चलिए, the parents are now coming forward helping the आंगनवाड़ी सेविका in cooking, and वहां से they started diversification of food, introduction of more nutritious elements, and so stuff like that. So what had started off purely as perhaps as an education or as a healthcare nutrition kind of initiative essentially became a much more broad-based intervention and the results. Yeah.
Thank you. I think Dolly, you can start now.
Yes.
Thanks for elaborate actually example. You have extended and show how one school turn it into. Thanks a lot. That one my question. You actually elaborated very well. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So now we will talk about there are other compliances. First is monitoring and reporting, which is a part of formal annual action plan. Also, the implementing agency, they are supposed to monitor the CSR implementation. And also as a one of content of the CSR policy, process of monitoring and reviewing of the project or the programs, the company has to mention in their CSR policy. Moving onwards, we will talk about the impact assessment. For the joint project, a company can also collaborate with other companies for undertaking the project or CSR activities in such a manner that the CSR committees of the respective companies are in a position to report separately on such project or programs in accordance with these rules. A single company can bear the entire cost of the impact assessment. Also, in case of a related parties, provisions of section 177 audit committee and section 188 related party may also be looked up. So when we talk about the partly completed project or ongoing project, the taste for the appropriateness may be adapted to ensure that reasonable time has elapsed after project completion for an effective impactment assessment study. And in case of voluntary impact assessment, so basically there are no restriction on companies of to get the impact assessment done on a voluntary basis. It is always a good governance practice to do the impact assessment.
Yeah, so I think I'll just take 30 seconds on that first point. Second and third we've already covered. So the Companies Act allows us, the CSR rules allows multiple companies to come together, pool their resources for undertaking a project. Of course, the rider being that the outcomes have to be distinct and very clear so that each of the company's boards are able to report as such. But when it comes to impact assessment, suppose अगर 4 companies ने मिलके अगर एक study किया है, एक project को support किया है, तो 4 impact assessment studies करने की जरूरत नहीं है. Okay. So 4 companies मतलब एक ही agency third party impact agency assessment करा सकती है. उसके जो terms of reference है, the donors can come together and actually ensure that there is proper independence and the studies are done at arm's length basis, and the same report can actually will meet the compliance requirement. The catch is that the outcomes have to be distinct. So that is one. Now, यहाँ पे if the companies which have come together happen to be related parties, then the other provisions which we have mentioned kicked off. Are actually we need to look into it. So a company उसकी subsidiary है और other related parties जो भी provisions है उस हिसाब से कराता है. That is the only thing we need to really ensure, that there are proper resolutions passed for award of contract and otherwise, and proper disclosures are made.
Yes. Yeah. So here we will talk about the process for monitoring, evaluation, and impact assessment. In the social development sector, monitoring, evaluation, and impact assessment processes have always been there as a part of the basic program design principles. What are the key features? So first is process is participative, non-intrusive, and is aimed at increasing the learning outcomes of both the organization and the beneficiary. Extensive use of participatory tools such as participatory.
Madam, screen is not visible. Screen is not.
Is it visible?
No, it is visible very much.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So extensive use of participatory tools such as participatory rural appraisals, appreciative inquiry processes, and focus on understanding rather than reporting. Also, beneficiary feedback or insight is an important part of the process. It is not about the data alone. Data is an enabler that provides insights about the project which is getting evaluated. Each beneficiary or a problem is a unique and has a context. It might be erroneous to generalize the impact. So Sachin sir, would you like to add on anything on this?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I think many of I was, as we were speaking, as also kind of looking at the chat box. Many of our fellow participants in this today's webinar are from the social development field. So I would not like to kind of repeat because this is what they've been doing all along. But the key feature is key when we talk about an impact assessment, it is not about just the numbers alone. Numbers, you have to look at it in a context, and the rest of the points essentially talk about that. ये नहीं है कि 10 में से 8 नंबर मिले हैं तो 8 वाला पास हो गया और 7 वाला फेल हो गया. There's no such thing like pass or fail in a social development field, because the problems are unique. There is a learning curve which is involved, and the essential therefore tools which are used are what have been mentioned. They use PRAs, inquiries, or basically the objective is to understand the beneficiaries, and the reason why you want to understand the beneficiaries is because this completes the feedback loop. Remember, we had started first started with the need assessment. फिर need assessment के हिसाब से हमने annual action plan बनाया, फिर annual action plan implement किया, सब कुछ results आए. Now we go back to the community, and therefore we try to correlate whether our baseline assumptions were right or wrong, or they need to be re-looked at. So that is where that can best happen when there is a dialogue.
Yeah.
So that is the whole the cycle is all about. Yeah.
Yes. So this is the monitoring and evaluation cycle. First, as sir just mentioned about that, the need assessment. So first we will check about whose need is it. So we will check about the need, and then community or ours. What we hope to achieve.
Yeah, Dolly, if you don't mind, I'll just summarize this very quickly, because that will leave us some time. This is a very typical. So we have already discussed this. We started with the need assessment as the first step, which actually defines our program architecture. हम लोग क्या करने वाले हैं, और ये सब गतिविधियां करके what are we trying to achieve. अभी जैसे मैम ने एक सवाल पूछा था पिछले इसमें कि हम एजुकेशन में, तो एजुकेशन में हम क्या करने वाले हैं. क्या हम गर्ल चाइल्ड एजुकेशन इंप्रूव करने की बात कर रहे हैं, वहां पे स्कूल में शौचालय टॉयलेट्स की बात कर रहे हैं, या वहां पे हम टीचर्स की कैपेसिटी की बात कर रहे हैं. सो वो कंप्लीट लूप है. तो यहाँ पे 3 ही चीजें हैं कि कई बार क्या हो जाता है कि हमारा फोकस पूरा हो जाता है एकदम शॉर्ट टर्म पे. हम सोचते हैं कि एक गांव में हमने स्कूल बना दी और स्कूल की बिल्डिंग कंस्ट्रक्ट हो गई, स्कूल में 500 बच्चे पढ़ रहे हैं, एंड दैट इज द इम्पैक्ट. So that is not really the right way to look at and interpret the impact. 500 बच्चे पढ़ रहे हैं उस स्कूल में is only a fact, but वो स्कूल की बिल्डिंग इंप्रूव होने से what is the long term change which has happened. हो सकता था कि is it really regenerating the interest in the community with respect to the school? Is it becoming more aspirational? So that is how the output and outcomes happen. So typically जो आपके right side में एक छोटा सा आप example जो देख रहे हैं कि हम बहुत सारी गतिविधियां कर रहे हैं, उससे से कुछ outputs निकलते हैं short term, कि आपने एक ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम किया, 5 बच्चे वहां पे आए, बच्चे लोगों ने सीखा, आपने ट्रेनिंग के बाद में देखा कि भाई हाँ इनका नॉलेज लेवल थोड़ा सा बढ़ा है, वेरी गुड। बट ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि आज ट्रेनिंग खत्म हुआ, कल से सब बात भूल गए। यदि हमने कृषि पे, एग्रीकल्चर पे कोई ट्रेनिंग दिया है, लोग उस बात को समझे हैं, किसान लोग, they go back to their fields, they are actually now implementing those training program inputs into their field, and then the crop actually, they get good crops or whatever. Those are all the outcomes which we are talking, and that is where that 1 year thing happens. And impact is key, sustainable year after year. So जो agriculture practices जो change की है उन्होंने, slowly, that has become a way of life, and then it is on a sustainable basis for years together. That is the impact area, and that takes time, and therefore, we go back to the previous conversation when we mentioned about the time lag of 1 year, 18 months, or even in some cases 3 years also.
Yeah. So moving onwards, there is this is a illustrative framework for to measure the impact. So Sachin sir, would you like to go ahead with this?
Sure. This basically just as a checklist for all of us, starting with the baseline, how do we move up, right? So we have to basically look at जो भी हम impact assessment third party कर रहे हैं. Okay, so this matrix will actually help us, one, understanding what are we really trying to measure. Are we really measuring only activities, or are we measuring long-term impacts? Then number two, from where the data source is going to actually come up. If we are trying to measure long-term impact and the methodology is being household, or individual level interviews, then I think there is a bit of a challenge there. So this is where, when it comes to how the design of the impact assessment exercise, number one, and at which stage it is. Secondly, data collection method. ठीक है, तो जब हम एजेंसी सिलेक्ट करते हैं, हम ये देखते हैं कि भाई उन्होंने किस तरह की डेटा कलेक्शन करेंगे. तो यदि हम बात कर रहे हैं लॉन्ग टर्म इम्पैक्ट ऑन एजुकेशन सेक्टर या एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर की बात कर रहे हैं या हेल्थ केयर सेक्टर की, और उन्होंने कहा कि नहीं हम 50 पेशेंट का सिर्फ इंटरव्यू कर लेंगे एंड वी विल डू दैट, सो दैट इज नॉट sufficient. Then we need different methodologies. Similarly, जब frequency की बात आती है, right, तो प्रोजेक्ट किस स्टेज पे है. बहुत सारे ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस क्या करते हैं कि आज प्रोजेक्ट लॉन्च हुआ और 6 महीने में बिल्कुल बता देते हैं कि वी हैव इम्पैक्टेड इतने हजारों लोगों को, but that doesn't happen. If you're trying to impact, let us say, education, healthcare, those kind of long gestation period, then you have to be patient. आपको उतना patient रहना पड़ेगा, and therefore that is the frequency level. If you're trying to measure outputs, then ठीक है, output तक आप कर सकते हैं. But if you're trying to measure कि healthcare का impact क्या हुआ है, then the project also has to be in the life cycle at a mature stage. तभी आप उसको कर पाएंगे. अगर प्रोजेक्ट अभी अर्ली स्टेज में या इंटरमीडिएट स्टेज पे है एंड वी आर ट्राइंग टू विजुअलाइज कि लॉन्ग टर्म इम्पैक्ट क्या होगा, तो दैट्स टू अर्ली. तो दैट इज वेयर दिस मैट्रिक्स वी हैव ट्राइड टू पुट टुगेदर, व्हिच हेल्प्स अस in terms of mapping the project, number one, at which stage it is, what are therefore the areas of inquiries and all, and accordingly you can determine the appropriate impact assessment. You can design an impact assessment study around it. Yeah.
So these are the methods of impact assessment, which is issued by the International Institute for Sustainable Development. We have also mentioned the link over here for your if you want to would like to check. So there are certain methods like expert judgment, quantitative, fiscal, and mathematical methods, taking the feedback from the NGO itself and the beneficiaries. Also cumulative impact assessment, metrics and the interaction diagrams, etc. So here are some FAQs. First is when two or more companies collaborate for the implementation of a CSR project, should the impact assessment carried out by one company be shared with other companies? So the answer is clearly given by the MCA FAQs. Yes, in case of two or more companies choose to collaborate for the implementation of a CSR project, then the implementation carried out by one company for the common project may be shared with the other company for the purpose of the disclosure to the board and in the annual report of on CSR. The sharing of the cost of impact assessment may be decided by the collaborating companies, subject to the limit as prescribed under the Rule 3 of the Act of the CSR Rules 2014. Second is, what is the role of international organization in the context of CSR? So again, it is given clearly under the MCA FAQ that a company can engage international organizations for the limited purposes, like for designing, monitoring, and evaluation of the CSR project, or for capacity building of personnel of the company involved in CSR activities. So here, clearly the limitation limitation is mentioned for the involvement of international organization in the context of the CSR. Third question is, if a company has obligation of spending ₹10 crore or more in the 3 immediately preceding financial years, but company has spent partial amount only, whose average is less than the 10 crore, or if a company has not spent at all, whether the impact assessment still needs to be done. So the answer is, if the company has an obligation of spending as per Rule 8.3 of this CSR rules, or if none of the project where it has spent having the outlays of ₹1 crore or more and have completed at least 1 year, impact assessment is not necessary. As we have seen in the CSR applicability previously, for the impact assessments applicability given under the Rule 8.3, if that applicability is not, that criteria is not meeting by the company, the impact assessment is not applicable. Further, if company has not spent at all, there is no question of impact assessment. Yeah, so here we are ending this webinar. So now we can take up some questions from the participants.
So मैं बात कर सकता हूँ मैम?
Can you just write on the chat box? आप chat box में लिखोगे आपके?
Ashwini, can you take up the questions? What is in the chat box, please?
And they are related to ongoing projects. Should we take that up because our topic is?
Yeah, 2-3 topics. Basically, the question is, if at the end of 31st March, I am transferring the fund to the Section 8 company, whether I complied. Second question, whether if 31st March I transferred and they have not spent, whether I have complied. So I think that question is quite old. It is not just transferring. You have to actually ensure. It's very well mentioned repeatedly. And third is about ongoing project. What is the question? And I think the similar question is there. So if for implementation, there is no question at all actually.
Okay.
So if for implementation, any question is there, impact assessment and all that, and monitoring agency and all that, there is no question. So I request participant, if that relevant question is there, please put, or you can ask. But if it is, and majority are introducing their own trust and fund, so 3 questions I noted, and it was relating to the donation at the 31st March. Sudhakar, you would like to say anything? Just you can
See
say
that,
for that question.
Yeah, in our previous webinars, we have categorically explained that whenever you have under CSR obligation, it is the company's responsibility to discharge that. Whether you do it directly or through an implementing agency, the agency is nothing but your extended hand only. So it is your responsibility to ensure that your implementing agency is spending that money. That's why this monitoring aspect has come. The CFO certificate he has to give it. And similarly, if you cut a check at the last week of March and you say that my implementing agency could not spend the money, it is not accepted. At the same point of time, sometimes it may so happen that you have given the money to your implementing agency and they have not spent at the end of 31st March. If it is a CSR program, but not an ongoing project, within 6 months, you are supposed to transfer that money to the specified fund. So here what happens is if you are a bit lazy and you are not monitoring it properly, you got a double yummy kind of thing. On one side, your money got stuck with your implementing agency. On the other side, you have to go and spend and deposit that money in the specified fund. That's why it is always advisable to disburse the money to the implementing agency progressively, monitor the implementation of the projects very closely, because at the end of the day, it is your responsibility. Also, at the same point of time, understand what is the difference between CSR program and an ongoing project. If it is an ongoing project, it can be in 1 + 3 years. If it is an only CSR programs, you have to, CSR activity or program, you have to complete within 1 year. So in case any one of you are having any kind of these doubts and other things, you can watch our past webinars, which are available on our website. And the next week, I think that is going to be the last webinar in the series of CSR webinars. There, to some extent, we may conceptualize the whole of the CSR, what's called as a subject, what we are discussing, but very that kind of the comprehensively will give the whole of the view. And apart from that, the disclosures and the reporting, which is a very important thing. CSR2 form, it is virtually a scanning report of the organization as far as the CSR obligations are concerned. So how that is to be done, and similarly, what kind of reporting you have to do it in the annual report. This will be, we will be discussing in the next webinar, which is going to be the last webinar in the series of CSR webinars. If time permits, we may conceptualize summarize the whole thing also. That's it from my side.
Okay. I think, Dolly, your presentation is also over, no?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, Ashwini, then you can formally close the webinar.
Yes, ma'am.
Ashwini, before you formally close, let me also thanks once again to Sachin for accepting our invitation and coming here and sharing his knowledge, which is he got a very vast knowledge. And Sachin, we will, in fact, in the future programs, wherever we feel your requirement, we will extend an invitation. I'm sure you will accept that. At the same point of time, I know that when working in the Reliance, last moment, what is going to happen, I don't know. I was actually keeping my fingers crossed. You should not give me a call and say, sir, sorry, there is an urgent meeting has cropped up. I'm helpless. Everything would have gone for a toss. But in fact, today you could make it and you could share your knowledge with us. Thanks very much from my personal this thing, and as far as Mehta and Mehta is concerned also. Thank you very much.
And
Thank you very much.
On behalf of the participants, I am conveying our sincere thank to Sachin sir for a very interactive session, as well as then all the partners of the Mehta and Mehta companies. Thanks a lot, sir, for giving the valuable inputs through this session. Thank you very much, Mr. Parvez.
Sudhakar, I was telling formally thanking Mr. Sachin. Of course, we have to thank. He is most busy person. Mr. Sachin, thanks a lot for your time. And exactly when we were doubtful you will able to make, thanks to make and carve out your time. Thanks a lot. Yeah, Ashwini,
it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to more engagements. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sachin sir. It was a pleasure hearing you on this topic. Thank you for taking out time and attending this session. Thank you, Dolly, for a wonderful presentation. And thank you, Sudhakar sir, for your valuable inputs. We at Team Mehta and Mehta are thankful to all the participants for attending. And as we have shared this, we'll also be sharing the presentation. But if you have any queries, you may write to us. Dolly, you may present that
Yeah.
CSR email ID. So you can write to us on this email ID if you need any further clarification. Thank you, everybody.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. And thank you so much, Sachin sir, for being here. And all the participants, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.